U.S. absolutely needs a Bitcoin reserve, and I think every other country does as well. The way I see it is Bitcoin is going to be the next major economic driver. Like, people are very bullish on AI, and they think AI is going to change the entire financial landscape because of massive investment amounts into it. But all those companies that are doing things like AI, they need to store their money somewhere. Like NVIDIA needs a vehicle to store their money from selling chips and whatnot, similar to what MicroStrategy is doing, right? They're trying to protect their savings. And it's just the same thing, but on a nation-state level, where countries realize that this is the next big thing. This is a superior asset class. The bullish thesis for Bitcoin adoption around the world, we covered things like MicroStrategy, just the immense buy pressure, pension funds coming in, sovereign wealth funds, nation states. Should have been last year, but I had to push it back. So let's say 2025, 1 million.
1 million by 2025. That's a very bold prediction. What gets us there?
Samson Mow makes a bold prediction. Bitcoin reaching $1 million by 2025. This target is not merely based on speculation, but on fundamental market dynamics. As Bitcoin's price rises, it creates a self-reinforcing cycle where the perception of Bitcoin shifts dramatically. At $100,000, Bitcoin might seem overvalued to some investors. However, once it breaches $250,000, the entire landscape changes. At $500,000, Bitcoin will be halfway to surpassing gold's market capitalization, prompting investors to question why they would exchange Bitcoin for fiat currency at all. This psychological shift will further accelerate Bitcoin adoption and drive prices higher.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space, and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
Everything's happening faster now,
Yeah.
especially with the Trump admin talking about a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And it's things like this that can really change the market dynamics in an instant, because it's just such a powerful shift, much like with the ETFs. When the ETFs launched in the US, it was sort of like a blessing worldwide that Bitcoin is a legitimate asset class now, and everyone can build products around it and financialize it. So everyone followed the US. And I think it's going to be the exact same thing with SBRs. Once the US does it, everyone's going to realize, okay, we need it too.
Yeah.
And there'll be a fast follow and a scramble to get theirs put together. US absolutely needs a Bitcoin reserve, and I think every other country does as well. The way I see it is Bitcoin is going to be the next major economic driver. Like, people are very bullish on AI, and they think AI is going to change the entire financial landscape because of massive investment amounts into it. But all those companies that are doing things like AI, they need to store their money somewhere. Like NVIDIA needs a vehicle to store their money from selling chips and whatnot, similar to what MicroStrategy is doing, right? They're trying to protect their savings. And it's just the same thing, but on a nation-state level, where countries realize that this is the next big thing. This is a superior asset class, and they're going to need to do something. And you couple that with the astronomical debt levels and the attempts to mitigate that, like creating the Department of Government Efficiency, right? And it goes to show that people are realizing that the existing system is not sustainable. The interest payments are approaching 1 trillion or are at 1 trillion a year. And it's only going to snowball because interest compounds unless they magically fix the interest rates somehow. But everything points to Bitcoin becoming the new asset that everyone's just piling into. And I think the US doing it will trigger it everywhere else. Governments always want what is valuable. And if Bitcoin succeeded, it was inevitable that governments will want Bitcoin because it's valuable, right? Governments didn't just wake up one day and say we wanted gold. They just wanted gold because it was valuable. It's what the people are using, and then that's what they want. So it's the same with Bitcoin. And I think the risk to Bitcoin is less than that of gold. Gold can be captured, and it's very hard to verify. There's talks of trying to audit Fort Knox now, and that's a massive undertaking, if even possible, at a massive cost. And you just don't have that problem with Bitcoin. So with gold, you don't have delivery most of the time. It's always paper. And that's what leads to this unverified pile of gold, theoretically, in Fort Knox. But with Bitcoin, you can always verify easily if you run a node. And I think that it's so easy to transport too that you don't come across the same problem as gold where it's captured. So even if governments buy up a large amount of Bitcoin, which I also don't think is possible, it's not going to end up like gold where it's captured. Bitcoin will still be money for the world. Should have been last year, but I had to push it back. So let's say 2025, 1 million.
1 million by 2025. That's a very bold prediction. What gets us there?
Well, the thing you have to understand is as the Bitcoin price goes up, the entire market dynamic changes. So Bitcoin at 100K is kind of like this. People are excited, but now they're bored again. People think it's a top. People are making predictions of a reasonable price target, maybe 150, maybe 200. They don't want to go too crazy out there. But when Bitcoin goes to 250, it's a very different landscape. When we get to 500,000, it's also a very different landscape too. We're halfway to overtaking gold. And at that point, people are starting to wonder, what do I sell Bitcoin for? Why am I selling Bitcoin for dollars? And then that catapults us again. So it's probably like a 2 or 3x from here, and then another 2 or 3x to get us to 1 million. The bullish thesis for Bitcoin adoption around the world, we covered things like MicroStrategy, just the immense buy pressure, pension funds coming in, sovereign wealth funds, nation states. And oddly enough, the takeaway was I mentioned something about Bitcoin price is probably suppressed now, and that's what made the media cycles for some reason. No, I haven't, but there's tons of people already working on the US. Our main focus is LATAM and other regions that are not as much in the spotlight.
What governments have you been in conversation with?
In this region?
Yeah.
We've talked to politicians in Korea, Taiwan, and Japan, and they're all very conservative. The message is really, we're waiting to see, like we're aware of Bitcoin, but we're going to wait for the US to make a move. And I think that's a strategic blunder, because what they're looking at it from, the point of view they're looking at it from is they want to be risk averse. And they say that, we're very risk averse. But risk is sort of a circle. If you go too far in risk aversion, you go to the risky side of the circle.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to happen, because they're going to miss the boat on front running the US.
Yeah.
Most countries don't have the fortitude to front run the US. They're waiting for a sign. And I believe it's going to be an exact replay of the ETFs. So the US launched ETFs first. Now they're at 1.3 million or so coins.
Sure.
And Hong Kong, I think, has 3,000 or 4,000 coins. Australia was third, and they have a few hundred coins. So you can see, like, if the US goes first, the other countries are not going to be able to keep up if it plays out the same way as ETFs.
Despite Bitcoin's strong fundamentals, its price has faced downward pressure, even in the absence of negative headlines. Mow points out that Bitcoin's market cycles are often misunderstood. Most of its gains occur within short bursts, making market timing extremely difficult. Investors who attempt to trade around short-term fluctuations risk missing out on Bitcoin's parabolic moves. Historically, Bitcoin experiences sharp corrections before entering exponential rallies. Technical analysts such as Mark Newton have identified cyclical downturns that align with previous patterns. However, once Bitcoin finds its bottom, its price trajectory tends to recover rapidly, reinforcing the bullish case for long-term holders.
I would say what's interesting is Bitcoin's not had negative headlines in February, but it was down. But I know our technician, Mark Newton, had talked about this being a cyclical downturn in Bitcoin through the end of March. So he was talking mid-January, getting down to 62. The weekend...
105 to 62. That's just Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a typical...
Do the math, though. It's like, in a month, 105 to 62.
Yeah, that's a test of the resolve
that hurts
bulls, right?
people that buy at 105.
Yeah, but as you know, Bitcoin makes all of its gains in 10 days. So if people sort of try to time this, they're going to miss out on a chance for Bitcoin to go back to its high. I think it's going to do better than 150 this year.
You do?
Yeah.
U.S. dollar?
Yes, because it's becoming more widely held.
Yeah.
If Citadel starts trading it, it starts to have more broad acceptance. I mean, I think technology is still important for the next few years. In our sector weightings this year, it's number 3. So financials, industrials, first and second. But I think it's just digesting a lot of the prodigious gains the last 2 years. But I don't think AI spending is really going to weaken. I know investors have a lot of good news baked in. In January, the first, let's say, five weeks or so, That leadership was different because it was a lot more tech outside of the Mag 7, and it was financials, and it was some mid and small caps. I think once we're through this rough patch, that's the kind of leadership we think will. It's kind of weighing on investors' minds. We're seeing it even in the surveys and CEOs because the tariffs and Doge are, the Doge is creating austerity. Tariffs are creating uncertainty. Businesses are maybe sort of sitting on their hands. This is why I think markets have been sort of sinking and momentum has done so poorly. But to me, Friday was a good day because, it was a bad news headline, but markets actually rallied. Well, I think investors are going to be kind of watching out of the corner of their eye because Friday is the jobs report. Last week, consumption kind of raised concerns that maybe we're slipping into a slower or downshift in speed. So if the jobs report's really weak, there could be some panic. I think if the jobs report is bad and maybe we initially panic, like even that day, then everyone's going to rethink and realize not only is the Fed put back, because the Fed now will need to cut, but I think that some of the things that look like the White House wants to slow the economy, they don't want to get to stall speed. So then the White House, I think, the Trump put comes back. So I think it helps market. I think it just depends on what the job number looks like. The Fed has not worried about the labor market being inflationary, but they would certainly worry if unemployment's picking up or if we have a negative jobs report. I don't think it's negative, but something, it could be well under 100,000. And if it is, I think the Fed would actually have to get off their hawkish paws.
What is the fundamental and the technical backdrop for bottoming happening this coming week?
Well, I think the best way to define a bottom, and Tom DeMark has mentioned this before, is stocks rise on bad news. And so Friday was maybe the first sign of bad news and markets bottoming, but I know our technician, Mark Newton, doesn't think we're there yet. He wants to see more signs of exhaustion, but we've seen sentiment turn negative. So maybe Friday, but it could have already bottomed too.
Mow touches on broader economic themes, including concerns about global economic stability, rising tariffs, and government intervention. These factors contribute to uncertainty in traditional markets, increasing Bitcoin's appeal as a hedge against financial turmoil. Furthermore, institutional acceptance of Bitcoin, as seen with major firms like Citadel, continues to grow, strengthening its position as a legitimate asset class. As Bitcoin becomes more widely held, its influence on financial markets will expand. The potential for a Trump put, the idea that a pro-Bitcoin stance from a Trump administration could further boost adoption, adds another layer of intrigue. The interplay between regulatory decisions, market sentiment, and macroeconomic forces will shape Bitcoin's trajectory in the coming years. Please like and subscribe.